On November 22nd, 1987, a person wearing a Max Headroom mask interrupted a television broadcast in what came to be known as the Max Headroom incident. Today's episode of the Panhandle Primate podcast is called Hacking the Feed. And I'm joined here with my often co-host, Shannon.
Yeah, the occasional co-host.
Always wife.
Yes.
And Trent, my sound/video guy.
Hello, everybody.
Close to video guy.
Almost.
We're definitely audio. We're close to video.
Trying.
We're getting there. But this topic kind of, Trent just texted me the Max Headroom incident. And what it was, I had the character Max Headroom was in my zeitgeist. You know, like I had reference to him, but I didn't know what it was. Like I didn't know the specific name Max Headroom at the time. So whenever Trent texted me that Max Headroom, I started looking up Max Headroom incident. It's this kind of a goofy little.
It's really goofy. I think if no one, are you talking about the actual incident itself? People should watch the video because it is hard to describe because it is so weird.
It's like one of the things I thought was funny was they were trying to simulate the wonky TV in the background, but what they did is they had a piece of corrugated metal that they were just tipping back and forth behind them.
And the sound is really wonky, so you can't really hear what he's saying.
Right. And so Trent, you actually kind of lived through it a little bit, right?
I did. That was.
Do you remember the actual when the incident happened?
I don't. I do not remember that.
It just kind of trickled down through the news and stuff, or what?
It did. Yeah, and I actually ran across a documentary that was talking about it, which surprised me. I just remember more on MTV seeing Max Headroom.
Because he was a VJ, right? A video DJ.
So to speak, yeah.
Is that what they call them? VJs? Pretty sure it's a VJ. But anyway, yeah, they had him and he hosted a show. But his origin story, the Max Headroom origin story, was called. You mind looking this up real quick?
What, the movie it's from or the TV show?
It's called I think it's called Max Headroom 15 Minutes into the Future. But it's like this dystopian sci-fi future where the news corporations run everything, I guess, and this guy's
Yeah, Max Headroom 20 minutes into the future.
20 minutes into the future. And so the origination of the character is that this reporter who's about to be a whistleblower wrecks his vehicle and goes to near death. But before he fully dies, they take part of his consciousness and upload it to the network.
Right.
And he becomes basically a corporate shield for the system. So he was rebelling against the media, and then the media company kind of takes him and what would the term be? Exploits him, I guess, exploits his image. Very RoboCop-esque, you know? But
well, what's funny, and I wasn't alive during this, but the podcast I'd listened to talked about how even at the time, Max Headroom would go on late night shows as a computer head.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, he was, and then
he was kind of a celebrity for a little bit.
Yeah, that's funny. I never heard of him.
Yeah, he generated from the that TV movie or whatever, and then he became like a disc jockey TV show host. And he actually had his own show where he interviewed people as well on his own show. But what was interesting is a lot of people thought that he was actually an AI-generated thing when it wasn't. It was just a guy wearing oversized makeup and a filming technique. So one of the things I thought was interesting about that was that it had a very Wizard of Oz vibe to it. Like they want, I say these powers project that AI is something we should be really scared of and is going to take over all jobs, and it's going to take over even being a TV host. But then the actual AI that they're showing as an example is just a guy wearing makeup in a conventional recorded system, There is no computer generated Max Headroom, even though he's supposed to be computer generated. There's no,
Yeah.
I just thought that was
that's
kind
what
of
was funny on that podcast, because those guys I was listening to were alive for it and remember
Which podcast was it?
Stuff You Should Know.
Okay, yeah, just gotta throw that out.
Yeah, and one of the guys at least remembers watching one of the late night shows with Max Headroom as the guest on the computer screen, and he was just a kid, and he said he genuinely thought it was a talking computer head. Like, he didn't realize he was an actor, probably sitting in another room recording this. That to him, it was legitimately a computer head.
It was legitimately an artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting, even what they're doing today, like with a lot of the stuff we see out of like Boston Dynamics, where it's these computers doing flips and stuff, and that's what you were talking about, is it's not like they're doing it, landing it every time. They might film 1,000 backflips to get the one perfect backflip.
It is kind of interesting because I listened to another podcast about AI. I've listened to several about AI, and pretty much all the scholars say where we are at with AI is not nearly as impressive as the general public seems to think. Not that it's not impressive. They're doing great. But there is a huge
lag.
I think the general public is worried that AI is going to take over the world, and they're just trying to get AI to do a backflip.
Right. Anyway, I thought that was all kind of interesting as far as his origin story and the fact that he kind of ended his career before the hack being a corporate shill, Max Headroom. He became the spokesperson for Coca-Cola. And it was the new Coke is what they were calling it. New Coke. Ride the wave is what the...
And so I haven't seen any of the original Max Headroom. Is it supposed to be a commentary on capitalism?
So the original Max Headroom was the movie. And then his character, as soon as he got out of the movie and was this TV host kind of character, he was very satirical. And one of the things I read that was kind of interesting is the writer of Max Headroom was specifically crafting it to be kind of like satirical and snarky, trying in a way of manipulating the younger audience. So it was supposed to be an older person trying to manipulate a younger person. So it was like they were writing him specifically to be like edgy and snarky, but it was edgy and snarky how an older person would be edgy and snarky.
Yeah.
So it was like explicitly written in at the beginning of the generation of the character to be satirical, snarky, a commentary. Yeah, I think so. Which I thought was interesting is that that's where it started. And then where it ended was being a corporate shill for Coca-Cola.
Well, that's why I didn't know if that was intentional.
The arc of the character?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think they just sold him out. I think it was like representation or representatory of a lot of the things in the 80s that started out cool and edgy.
It totally got sold out.
Yeah. Started out cool and edgy. It's like punk. Started out cool and edgy. By the 90s, it's part of the machine, But I just thought that was an interesting arc for the Max Headroom character in itself, right? And then the fact that these people who, more than likely what they did, and this is kind of interesting, they said for about $10,000, you could go to Radio Shack, build a transponder and a microwave transponder and overpower a signal to a satellite dish for a TV. You could overpower that antenna with the signal and then have it send out your signal. There's also a possibility that it was a person who worked at the news station and just flipped it over for a minute, played it, flipped it off. Yeah. Either way, all of that stuff is kind of interesting. The video itself is kind of interesting. I think that there's probably a lot of podcasts that go very deep in that.
Bless you.
Thank you.
They go very deep into truly analyzing what was he trying to say and was there a deeper meaning. But I'm kind of moving on from there. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think if anything, maybe we can loop back around to that.
Yeah, we can
I think it's so hard to tell exactly what he's saying that you are a little bit guessing.
But I was thinking what was interesting to me was the public display of deviancy, right? It's kind of this acknowledgement that, hey, this is almost something that needs to be respected, even though there's a ton of people in the TV studio that could jack with the signal. Most people didn't jack with the signal, right? Anybody could project a message to the nation. But most people don't project a message to the nation, you know? It was like one of those things where even if it didn't mean anything, even if it was just, hey, we're just going to jack around and show that we can do this, just the act of it itself sent a ripple through the society. Correct, Trent? I mean,
That's the way I perceived it, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even born yet when it happened.
Well, and I am curious. This I just don't know. So this is just an actual question. My thought is that what he did would be illegal. But what about it would actually be illegal? Just taking over the signal?
I think it was piracy.
For
Okay.
sure.
It's a piracy act. It's like that's somebody's private property that you're then
Okay.
using.
I was curious
your
what
signal
about
through.
it? What he
Right.
would actually be charged with if he
It
were
was
ever caught.
it was like hacking basically before hacking was hacking. Because
But it
Yeah.
really
You know,
wasn't that
it's
big of a
pre-internet.
fine.
Well, that's what I was curious.
One of the
'cause
things I found was
it's a
it was
victimless crime.
yeah, and it wasn't a super crazy fine, and I don't know. It might have been like $100,000 and up to a year in jail or something like that, you know. Which, I mean, I wouldn't want to pay, and I wouldn't want to spend a year in jail. But it's not like they're going to throw you underneath the jail.
No
and forget
harm was really done.
Yeah, I think it's other than showing that the behemoth of corporate media is just a facade, you know? It's literally just one person picking which signal is going to hit which tower, and it goes to everybody. And as long as it's within the bandwidth of the quote-unquote rules. What I thought was interesting is the incident took place during a Doctor Who episode.
I didn't even know that.
It was a late-night Doctor Who episode. And it was kind of a weird one where this alien from another star system was coming to Earth and was going to take over Earth. And so she was kind of scouting. So she was dressed in a human body, looked like a human. And she was like scouting the planet for her domination. And Doctor Who was like going to stop her from doing that. And then that's whenever that little clip pops in and then it pops out. Now, it might have just completely been a random thing that it was in the middle of Doctor Who. That could have just been happenstance, you know? Anyway, I found a couple of cool quotes that I thought would plug in nicely here. Man is least himself when he talks in his own persona. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. That's an Oscar Wilde quote. But I think it was in V for Vendetta. I think the line is, give a man a mask and he will show you his true face. Mm-hmm. Which that's a pretty dope line too.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought that was interesting in regards to this person was probably a straight-laced square. It could have been anybody.
Let's back up just real quick.
Okay.
Because in the video, he is saying some things, but it ends with him getting spanked, basically with a fly swatter with his bare ass.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that should be said. Because it's not as though he gets on to this feed and just starts revolutionizing everything. He's not trying to revolt. He's not trying to incite anything. He's not even trying to say anything. What we can tell that's actually meaningful. Now, maybe there is. Maybe he was truly speaking in code that we just don't understand. I don't know. But from what we can tell, it just seems like he got on and was just acting silly for a minute.
Being a goofball.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify that in case people haven't seen the video. So.
Well, but see, that's what I would say. So where I'm going to go with this is I think it was the introduction of a motif, right? And the motif is a man in a mask hijacking the state-run television video in order to inspire acts of dissent and deviance.
Yes.
It's not saying deviate from the script my way.
Oh, I know.
Or do this specific
and that's what I
thing.
want to get into, I think. Maybe you can finish your quotes, but I want to loop back around to the idea of deviancy.
Well, those are the two quotes.
Okay.
The main thing is I was just gonna preempt it with saying two of the popular modern day cultural references that I wanted to allude to was V for Vendetta and Mr. Robot. Both of those, they take over the feed and they project out their act of rebellion
In a mask.
Yeah. And inspiring people to, kind of go their own way in a sense, with F Society. I was meaning to rewatch some of the clips
From Mr. Robot?
From Mr.
Yeah.
Robot of where they're doing that. And then the V for Vendetta one is obvious, but that's where I was going to say is just those are the public displays of deviancy. But what were you going to say about that? What were you wanting to touch on?
I think it's worth discussing it further than just saying it is deviance. Because, which we've had this conversation before, but deviancy, like even when I think about it negatively.
It is always like...
No, it's not. Well, I think socially it is.
Well, but what I'm saying is, whenever I'm saying deviancy, what I'm saying is it's a rebellion from the status quo or the projected desired result.
Yes. So there's a range, though, of deviancy. And yes, deviating from the standard is all it means.
Have you ever seen Pleasantville?
No.
You've never seen it? Have you
I've
seen
never
it, Trent?
seen it.
I have.
Okay, so in Pleasantville, it starts off and their world is black and white, and it's 1950s, and everything is perfect, right? The basketball team, every single one of them, they all shoot the ball, it all goes in perfect, right? The right boys are with the right girls, and there's nothing's out of line. And then slowly, I can't remember if somebody jumps into the show from the outside world. It like breaks the fourth wall, and somebody who had grown up watching that show jumps into it, and they start messing some stuff up, and the world starts to get color.
Like The Giver.
Kind of like The Giver, right? Yeah. And so, but as stuff gains beauty and color, like I think that's red rose, a rose becomes red first. And then they shoot one of the basketballs and miss, and then the basketball's orange, And it's kind of one of these things where it was a perfect situation and nobody was questioning it at all. But the second there was one thing that deviated from the constant, it just completely threw everything off the
Well, that's my
rails.
point. So there is negative deviancy. Okay, like deviancy can go all the way to murdering someone. But then there's just deviancy of...
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that being a deviancy.
It's like a social... Like, so if you... Like, this is sociology. You would take a deviancy class. And there's a range of deviancy where even just speeding is considered deviancy, which that one's still illegal. But even if you're in a crowd and you're speaking too loudly on the phone, right? Like, that's deviancy as well. There's a whole range of it.
So I originally in my notes when I wrote it, and you brought up the word deviancy as we were talking
because I had a
about
very
it.
specific
But
thing
see,
I was
originally what I was saying is it's a public display of disobedience, because I do think that there's a difference between being disobedient and being deviant.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So Basically, you can think of it that there's, on one side, there's deviancy. On the other side is conformity.
Okay.
Most people are somewhere in the middle, probably more on the side of conformity, but we all deviate, right? So nobody, I should not say nobody, most people don't follow every single rule perfectly, right?
Yes.
Again, maybe you smack your gum and that's considered deviating from what's socially acceptable. Maybe you speed, maybe you whatever, right? Like there's all these different things that you could be doing on a scale.
Right.
So there is the
Spectrum.
actual spectrum. There's the actual crime side of it where that is deviant. And that's, I guess, where we think of...
Disobedient.
Well, that's
What
why
I'm
I wanted
saying
to clarify.
is whenever, because to me, a deviant act does not necessarily have to be against the law, or
I know. That's
or
what
even,
I'm trying to say.
Even socially, I don't think it even has to be socially in itself faux pas.
But that's usually what deviancy is that you are deviating from a social standard.
Right, but I'm saying...
But some of that is good. Otherwise, we would be Pleasantville. Otherwise, we would be all conformists. So that's why I'm saying is some level of deviancy is a good thing because it keeps it breaks up the
it keeps it
conformity.
spicy.
And so that's what I think is interesting about this incident is, yes, what he did was illegal. But in a way, like I said, it was a victimless crime. No harm, no foul, almost. They never found him. They never really kept looking for him because at the end of the day, he didn't really do anything bad. But it was still a public display of deviance.
Well, and seeing that's
which is what the act of it, I think, is more important than the actual content.
See, some of it...
I think the reason why they didn't pursue it much is because he didn't touch the right buttons. Yes, maybe he didn't do much, but there, when you get to the, I was watching, like I was saying earlier, the antisocial. What was that? What did I say that?
4chan and
yeah,
but it was about 4chan and then 2chan and that whole bit, and they got away with a lot of hacks, and there were a lot of things they did till they hacked the wrong person, and which is our government, and the government said, oh no, no, you're not going to do that, and then they shut it down, and they did all those guys ended up. Spending some jail,
and that's what I wonder is, to me, if you're doing it and your goal is, if you don't want to get in trouble, but you want to throw a wrench in the system, what you're gonna do is, like, let's say that I am politically radicalized one way or the other, right? Well, maybe I get on and I act like, let's say that guy was actually a liberal. Because one of the things is he says, oh, frickin' liberals, or he like kind of makes that comment, right? If he was a liberal guy, I would maybe say, hey, I'm going to create a persona of this ultra conservative, far the other direction act. I'm going to jump on here and I'm going to do this act of deviance, but who they're going to come down on is going to end up being my enemy.
Yeah.
I do think that there is a level of, whenever you're doing acts like this or doing things like this, their goal might not be very clear to somebody who is not them.
Who's they?
Whoever's like perpetrating the event. So
Okay.
like the act of deviance. Okay. So like the actual people in the mask.
Okay.
They might have literally just been saying, hey, we're gonna jack with the conservatives and make it look like they're these whack jobs.
Say QAnon.
It's the same thing as it's a way of muddying the water and obfuscating the actual conversation, if that's a word.
Well, and that's why it is a word. Obfuscate. But that's why I think the act of it is more important than what was actually said or anything within the video. It was just the act of hacking and disrupting.
The scene in 300?
I've never seen 300.
You haven't? Have
No.
you seen it? Trent, you've seen it? So at the end, they're all about to be killed. The 300, they're round up. They've got this little cone of shields where they're protecting themselves, but they're going down, and they know it. And as their last act of defiance, they throw a spear at the emperor, and they just rip out some of his like face jewelry and it causes him to bleed, and that was the whole goal. We showed that an emperor could bleed. They weren't even trying to kill him. Oh, the God King, yeah. He can bleed. But the whole thing was, it wasn't to win. It's almost like the same thing as like the Last Stand at the Alamo. It's just showing, they use it as a symbol to say, hey, we can do this thing.
It's just the act of more than
It's
anything.
just the act of. But I did want to play with the motif of the criminal who exposes the true crime.
Okay.
I like this because I was thinking about it in regards to like Robin Hood, for instance. Robin Hood steals. He breaks the law. He is disobedient. He's a rebel. He's causing all this problem. But then he takes the money and turns around and gives it to the poor, right? He gives it all away. So what he's showing is, it is bad to steal somebody's money.
But who's the one stealing the money?
But who's the one stealing the money? He's giving it back to the poor. He's giving it back to the people.
Well, because he's saying that they already stole it from the poor. He's not. He is saying he's not stealing. He's returning. And
so I was kind of wondering if the promise. Well, now granted, we live in such a warped media scape from the 80s comparatively, because in the 80s you turn on the TV and what was on the TV is what you watched on the TV.
Yes.
It was given to you. You had no choice.
You could pretty much tell how someone voted based off the TV shows they watched because it was so unifying.
Right. It was so unifying. So, and I'm wondering if a portion of it is just to break the programming just enough to get people questioning like, oh man, I have no idea who's pumping information into my house. The stuff that I'm watching, I don't know who's doing it.
It's like almost a look behind the scenes. It's not.
A peek behind the curtain.
The curtain, yes.
That's what I thought was interesting. The Max Headroom being overlapping with the Wizard of Oz in some ways. Because he was this AI personality. And so they chose this guy. Now, granted, it could have just been they had that mask laying around and there was no connection.
Well, but then they simulated the background. So they were obviously trying to go for that.
And then he also says, ride the wave. They're playing with that character.
Yeah. So even if it was random, he still went through with the character.
But that's what I thought was interesting is like it offered an opportunity to conceptualize the wizard behind the curtain. You know?
Yeah, just to
Which is the whole concept of the Wizard of Oz, is that you're going to the wizard to be given everything that you need, everything that you've ever needed, which I think is interesting with the overlap of advertising with Coke, right? We'll give you the best drink you've ever wanted, you know? Give the whole thing to you. I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting. I liked that overlap of that motif, you know?
Yes.
Continue, I guess.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
So there were a whole bunch of other TV hijackings in the 80s. Most of them were dirty channels. So like the Playboy channel, a religious right-wing person would hack it and say like, you know, thy kingdom of heaven is against you and you sinners beg for mercy, basically stuff like that. But it was all hijacking of like the Playboy channel and, you know,
had a clear intent.
You'd say smut TV. There were a couple of other interesting hijackings that had to do with aliens. And it was like, we are from the planet for Lekuli and we're coming to your planet to take over. And, you know, which I thought was interesting that it was during the episode of Doctor Who. Because, like, as I was looking, they fell into, like, 3 categories. One was religious. One was just kind of a flub up from the TV station. And then the other one was, like, kind of like alien conspiracy type taking the signal over. So I thought those were, like, kind of fun. But I also kind of thought it was interesting to hold that in conjunction with the War of the Worlds whenever it got radio broadcasted.
Oh yeah,
you know, because it was in a way. I wouldn't say it was a hijacking, But
No, it wasn't. It was supposed to be.
But it was relying on the listeners' reliance on the news to be the art, so it was like they could say, hey, news flash, there are aliens on the ground, but people believed it because they believed everything that came out of the radio at the time, and
well, they didn't know. They just would turn it on and just hear it.
Yeah, and what I thought
like it was a good test just to see how well that broadcast system was working.
Well,
how well people responded.
Correct.
But this is what I thought was interesting about that. It is the period. You cannot ever use that medium again for the same way.
It
right?
wouldn't be the same, no.
Yeah, people had all of their trust in the radio. The radio will not lie to me. Then they do the War of the Worlds, and now everybody's like, well, it could lie to you. Do you remember hearing about that? When that happened, it lied to you, right? It is almost an act of deviation on its own,
Is this where we talk about Marshall McLuhan, or do we wait?
So, we wait just 1 second.
Okay, because I feel like that is very related to what he's talking about.
Oh yeah, no, that's actually okay. So as the segue, what does it look like to hack the feed today? Right? So like what back then you were watching Doctor Who and all of a sudden this guy's getting slapped with a fly swatter, and it's this goofy thing and then it disappears, right?
Right.
That's how they hacked the feed then. How do you hack the feed now? And that is like, be thinking about it. It's just kind of a general question. I don't really have an answer to it.
Now, this probably isn't the right, not that there is a right answer, but this isn't necessarily hacking the feed, but I think the only way nowadays to truly do that is to completely remove yourself from it. Turn off everything and just...
That's how you escape the feed.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is more along the lines of like, it almost goes without saying that you need to be independent of the medium. But a part of it is like, okay, for instance, this podcast. How do I get people to listen to this podcast?
You have to play with the feed, the algorithm.
You got to play with the feed. You got to engage with the feed. You got to understand the technology and how it works and what the games are and what you need to do to go viral and become clickbait and there's all these different, but that's not overriding the system in the same way. That is like, hey, the system works like this and this is how we work with that system. But like my question now, I'm also saying I don't have an answer for this, but like that was the thing that I was wondering is like, what would today's, it would almost be like, oh, it kind of came to me. The Amber Alert that the state issues on all phones, where all of a sudden, all of the phones go, there's a child missing. Here's the information. It's just a general broadcasted text message that all phones hooked up to these different towers hit, So I wonder if there would be a way of like hacking that, like hacking the if that would be the equivalent,
Yeah, that would probably be the equivalent. Something that's unifying that we all participate in.
Because you can do a radio station because not everybody listens to radio. You can't do a TV station because most people don't have TV, It'd have to be, I think, cell phone.
Well, and this isn't exactly a one-for-one correlation, but I think about the meme. Because I think, in a way, Max Headroom would have been a meme had there been memes back then.
Right.
But that's the idea, something that went viral.
Right.
So nowadays, we just have lots of them.
Well,
Instead of just having, like, one.
We have lots of them, but part of it would be what I would quite... This is where Marshall McLuhan comes in. We're actually getting there. But, so, here, let me hammer out this couple of just one or two lines, and then we'll... Because this is where Marshall McLuhan would go. So there's different types of feeds, right?
Okay.
Modern day. And back to the example with the War of the Worlds, what is the reliability of that feed, right? So if I'm getting everything off of TikTok, is that a reliable source of information? If I'm getting it from the state-run media, is that reliable information? Like, I think that question is more present today than it was at the time of the Max Headroom incident, I feel like.
Yes. I agree.
And then, the different types of feed, like you have like a timeline algorithm where it's just like as you post, it's up, and it
like your home feed, your explore feed.
But then you also have got the algorithm based.
Yeah.
Like, was it Instagram? Instagram used to be timeline. Chronological. That's what I meant. Chronological. And then it went to algorithm.
Yeah.
To where now it chooses which signal to broadcast and which signal to suppress. It through an algorithm, through a system of, some would say, non-conscious, but has to be an element of consciousness in any system. But and so this is where I was going to say, okay, what does it look like to hack the feed today?
Well,
a portion of that is you have to understand the medium.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Well, hold on. Let me back up a little bit because I was thinking about the book feed.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a feed by M.T. Anderson. Spoiler alert if you haven't read it. Sorry. But the girl in the book tries to hack her feed. And so what she does is try to really throw the algorithm off. So she goes like to the mall and goes to all these different stores, looks up all this different stuff. She's Googling all different things you can think about. So that way the algorithm cannot pinpoint who she is. However, what's interesting in the book is that whenever it comes time that she needs like medical assistance because her feed is malfunctioning, they won't help her because her algorithm's all messed up and she's not participating the way that she should be. So they don't have an incentive to help her.
Yeah, they're just going to let her go.
So that's a really... I don't just want to... There's a better word for it than just negative. But, of course, it's highlighting there is no way to hack the feed then, right? Like, in that system, you can't hack it because then you do have to rely on it, whether or not you want to.
Right.
So she was not able to get the help she needed because she was no longer an active participant of the feed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But okay, so now we're to the point of the medium is the message.
Yes.
Do you want to do like a just brief introduction for those in the audience that have maybe never heard of Marshall McLuhan?
I can do a very brief background.
You don't have to do a background on him, just on his concept.
Yeah. I will just say very quickly, he is a Canadian philosopher, was more prominent, I think, around like the 60s and 70s. That would be late in his life, maybe 50s through 70s.
That's when he was hitting his victory lap?
Probably. I may be off by a little bit, but he died in the 80s, so that would be my guess. His main idea that he is most known for is the medium is the massage.
The massage.
Or what we say now is just the medium is the message.
That rolls off the tongue a little bit.
I know, but I really think the idea of the media is the massage fits really, really well.
Okay, continue on.
Anyways, just to put it nicely packaged, the form is more important than the content. Meaning, we today are so caught up with the content, right? Take TikTok, for example. We're so caught up with what the videos are showing us that we're not understanding what TikTok is or what it's doing to us as a society. And I guess maybe TikTok's a bad example because of the ban. But take any social media. You could use Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any of these. It's not necessarily a TikTok thing. But the form of it, the way that it is changing our society is more important than whatever it is actually saying itself. So a good way to think about this is the car. Everyone is excited that cars are everywhere. You know, the invention of the car, that's going to change everything. People are excited, and they're picking out makes and models and features without understanding how it's actually changing cities and health. You know, like people aren't walking anymore. And our dependency on it and car wrecks And so there's all these other things that the introduction of the car is now including, and we're just looking at the steering wheel, right? So again, we can look at YouTube and say, well, I can watch YouTube videos, but we're not understanding how the whole YouTube is truly shaping our connection to each other, our connection within society, our idea of deviancy, all of these
our connection to information.
Yes, it's changing how we truly process the world around us.
What we even see as information.
Yes, and so that's his that's his surface level idea.
Right.
Then he goes a lot deeper into our connection with capitalism, because guess what the media does? It advertises, it sells us things, which this is what I try to get through to all my students. If nothing else, they learn nothing else from me, right? Can you even go hardly anymore an hour without an advertisement? Most of them know because they're checking their phone, and guess what the phone is inundated with? Advertisements. So the media around us has truly just made us a product. Without the media, are we a product?
Well, in a sense, it's made us a silo. It's made us a vessel for holding things.
Yes.
You know?
For buying things.
Right. Well, but not even necessarily buying things, because you can show a series. You know how they say that we're doing good over there? We're all right?
Yeah. All good. I was trying to move. I got stuck.
You know how they say if there is a convenience store, if there's two convenience stores on catty corner lots, they both make more money.
Oh, yeah. Like the illusion.
Yeah, it's like the illusion of choice actually brings more customers to that, and there's not any competition. So even though they have two different names and they're two different companies, in reality, they're working together, because either way, you're buying gas, you're buying a soda pop, and they're both trying to make you buy gas and trying to make you buy a soda pop. So it compounds to where, yeah, you're going to buy a lot more from them.
Which
So I feel like that's a good time to kind of talk about misinformation, which is basically what they're driving on everything now. So I don't even think we talk about hacking the feed. It's really subtle now what they're able to do, because we are so driven by social network and what we do and the way that we look at things and view things, which I think goes back to what you were saying, Shannon. That we're not seeing the misinformation is a lot harder. It's harder to pull that out of the whole everything you're seeing.
You know what I think of it as is like, the old people that fall for the scams on their cell phone. Somebody gets a text message and it says, "Hey, we have here that you're $100 behind on this payment, and we need you to send your information here, and we'll get it paid for you real quick." And they're like, "Oh, thank goodness!"
My favorite one is now whenever I get a text from like UPS.
Yeah,
we are not able to deliver your package because
your parcel.
It always says parcel because your address is not updated. I'm like, that would get someone if.
And as much as people are ordering off of Amazon,
because I was like, oh man, my package isn't
delivered. Do I want that package?
The sheriff's office scheme also, where they call that sounds totally legit. I don't know if you've heard that or had. I've actually got a call on that
for donating to the sheriff's office.
No, that you actually have an outstanding. Like something you haven't paid, and they're going to issue a warrant for you if you don't pay for it then. But it sounds really legitimate. It's Officer so-and-so, and, he's calling to give you a heads up before they come and issue a warrant.
But see, here's what I kind of, the reason I bring that aspect of it up is, to me, the scam has to constantly be evolving.
Yes.
Because we are able to spot the scam so quickly.
Yes.
Right?
Well, we can spot the scams that we are now used to. But I don't think, kind of like what Trent was saying, I don't think we can spot them as easily today.
I feel like they are camouflaged a lot.
Well, that's what I was going to say is what they're doing. To me, it almost seems like a red herring, right? They're like, look over here, while the actual misinformation is sliding by over here.
Yeah.
And to the degree that there's ever been real information, like, I don't think that the government has ever given us real information, or that even most newspapers or publications.
We have to understand that everything has a bias and an objective and a certain audience they're trying to appeal
a preconceived notion that this has to be right. So, for instance, like in regards to like the Iraq War, it was like, well, Saddam Hussein is evil, and America has to be free, so we must kill Saddam Hussein.
Which actually, Marshall McLuhan specifically talks about newspapers. It's like, what are newspapers without headlines? Bad headlines, specifically. Nobody buys newspapers for good headlines. Nobody cares whenever we're all happy and things are great. But the minute there is a bad headline and something is scary or dangerous or whatever, people go buy that.
Right.
They
That
thrive
sells.
off of that.
That
So then,
sells.
then we can go into now the media today. YouTube video. I mean, look, let's talk about, I think you were going to talk about it anyways, like the clickbait titles.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole form to a YouTube video title, right?
Well, that's kind of part of what does it look like today to hack the feed. Like, to me, a part of it is understanding. Like, I hear people say it even once I'll click on a video and start watching a video. They'll say, "Hey, sorry for the clickbaity title,
But I had to do that.
but I had to do it because I want people to watch my video. But here's what I'm saying." And it does go along the same lines, but it's definitely a way of trying to game the system.
So last night Amber was trying to look something up. We hit a lot of clickbait on YouTube, but one of them was Will Smith playing Popeye, and it was totally AI generated, looked legit, but it didn't show him at first, and then it just said the new Popeye trailer coming out, and then you
And it's
see
like,
him.
Will Smith, what?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're like, woo, okay.
That is
Which-
wild.
Twist.
Is interesting because, okay, going back to McLuhan, he was talking about whatever technology is coming. So at the time it was TV. But now, of course, we're talking about social media. And then, of course, now, even more relevant, AI. There are so many posts on any social media platform that are completely AI generated.
100%.
And then even, like, Emmett will watch a YouTube video, and I'll immediately be like, that's AI. You're just watching AI. Like, you're watching a script that is generated by AI.
Right.
He doesn't know. Most people
It'll be
don't
like
know.
starfish. Or like we're watching
Yeah.
something about a jellyfish or something.
Or I Google information because I'm trying to read about something,
And
and
then
the first 4 ones I click on are all ChatGPT. What do you do with that? Because, now you're not even engaging with real content. I mean, I guess define real content.
That's what my question would be is, it's kind of one of those things where, like, it's like snapping out of the illusion, right? Like Max Headroom pops up on your TV screen, and you're like, what am I watching? This just seems like some garbage that somebody threw together and put up on my screen. Like, this is pointless. And then your show comes back on.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, well, what makes this show not garbage? It's the exact same thing. It's something that somebody's just projecting into my TV. Like, I have no control over it, and it does not care who is watching it.
That's what I think is so interesting about the response to the Max Headroom incident, because, of course, I wasn't there, wasn't alive, but everything I looked up said people found it really disturbing. And that was the word that I kept reading. Just, it was eerie and disturbing because it was so nonsensical.
Well, and you have to look at the year that happened.
Yeah.
The culture, the way that people were. I mean, internet was not really a thing, and if it was, I think, what year was that exactly?
It was 87. I think the internet was
So-
starting
But
to
barely,
be
yeah.
something.
Maybe some kind of dial-up, with a text-only type deal, basic language something. But things were different. I mean, that was more when I was a kid growing up, But it wasn't. I was not overwhelmed by a lot of things being thrown at me left and right. It's pretty simple. You go outside, you play, you
Right.
come
Yeah.
home. There's no cell phones. I mean, we didn't even have cell phones. If we did, they were a bag phone. So, I mean, things have changed a lot really quick. So the way that people looked at it then, I'm sure it was the same as the War of the Worlds at that time. It's like, wow, this is really happening. And, these people can take over whatever they want.
Well, and that's what I do think is interesting about it, is because it's in your living room, and it's probably the first piece of technology like that people have had in their homes. So then it's like you bring something into your home, you do trust it.
What time we sitting at? How long we?
We're at 50 minutes right now. Yeah. Oh.
Bless you.
I knew it was coming. I couldn't get it though.
I was really trying to not be an asshole and
you were about to ruin it. Both of y'all were about to ruin it. I looked at both y'all in the eyes, and y'all were both about to ruin my sneeze. And y'all both knew it was gonna be a good sneeze too. Like it was one of those that built up like it was about to be good, and it was. Okay, I was just time checking because I do have a little bit more to hammer through. Now, all of it's going to be in the same topic vein, but it's just a couple things I want to throw out. I think it can maybe spur the conversation.
It's about 11:40 right now, also, so just to give you an idea on time. I mean, I don't mind if we go over. It's up to you.
So, an aspect of it is trying to sidestep the feed, right? It's like, I love YouTube. Like, I love the channels that I follow on YouTube. Like, I love the content that I follow on YouTube. And there are certain creators that the YouTube algorithm gave me. And as I watch their channel, I'm like, dang, this channel was made for me. Like, I am the target audience 100% through and through. And they only have like 1,000 people watching their video, right? And I'm one of them. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, this is so. And I guess what I'm saying is, I feel like there is a new aspect of like media where it's independent creators. They're floating out these creations, and then I can sidestep the algorithm by subscribing to their channel. To where,
but are you really sidestepping the algorithm?
I don't know.
Can you? That's my question. And I don't know the answer to that. But even if you're subscribing, you're letting the algorithm know that you like that content.
Exactly.
I agree with that 100%.
But I'm giving it the data to serve me.
You're just programming your algorithm. Yeah,
Right. That's what I'm saying, though, is there an aspect of, like, I've thought about this for a long time, or for a while. Imagine if you had an AI assistant that was devouring your data the same way corporations devour your data. But it was giving you useful information back. Like, for instance,
what ChatGPT is supposed to be.
Well, like, for instance, if, like, let's say your phone registers every time that you touch it and that you look at it.
It does.
Right? I know. I'm saying, now imagine you had an AI that was plugged into positive psychology and research about what it means when you're compulsively checking your phone over and over. And it can recognize that compulsion. And then it can call your attention to that compulsion and then possibly present you with several tools that will help you mitigate and control that compulsion.
Yeah, they don't care about that.
But that's what I'm saying is like imagine an algorithm or like...
Well, I think we've talked about this before. As much as I can complain about the algorithm, well, I complain about the algorithm because it sucks. Not because it's an algorithm. Which I kind of, in a way, hate because of all the critiques of capitalism and everything. Because the algorithm is designed for me to consume things. And so, in a way, I have an ethical issue with it. At the same time, when the algorithm is done right, it's really helpful and
super
convenient.
Helpful. Well,
it's just the problem is that I don't ever feel like it's done right. That's my issue with it.
But you also don't give feedback to algorithms.
We are always giving feedback to algorithms.
I know, but for the projection that's going to come back to you. So, for instance, like if you go on Instagram and you used Instagram.
I do use Instagram.
Well, I mean, I know, but I'm saying
it's just if I look up a banana bread recipe, my home feed is banana bread recipes, or my explore page is banana bread. I only need one recipe.
Yeah, and
Why are you showing me 30 recipes?
I guess there's definitely a lot of stuff for it to...
Then there are times, which we've talked about this, that I am truly looking for something and I'm praying to the algorithm gods to truly help me, right? Like I am looking for a dresser. Find me a dresser. Guess what? The algorithm is like, screw you. Here's a sideboard.
And you know what's weird
Here's
is you even put in like the dimensions.
I
want it 28 by 42 by...
And I actually know how to use like Google Boolean operators. So it's like I actually know how to utilize Google to I know how to optimize it more than the average person, and yet I was still struggling to find anything past just blatant sponsored sites.
And inversely, there are people who have no idea what they're doing, and they find the exact thing.
Exactly. That's what drives me crazy. And now I wish there's a way you could toggle the algorithm on and off. Because there are times where an algorithm is useful, and so I don't want to demonize all algorithms. There are times that it's really convenient when done well, and then there are times I just want to turn it off and I just want to engage in.
Well, and this is where I would say it would come in interesting to have a to be like you were saying, be able to toggle it on and off. You do want, there's sometimes you want it to acknowledge that you are you, and then sometimes you want it to think that you're just a random person.
Yes, exactly.
You're in a buzz?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if that
I
was
think it's the
outside or
heater.
inside.
Is it? It's weird. Okay.
I think it's
It's
yeah,
fine.
now it's gone
faded
now.
out. Yeah.
Okay, so you can subscribe to independent creators. That's where I would say you can that to me is kind of sidestepping the algorithm. Where, like, for instance, if you actually start going through word of mouth. So for instance, if I'm watching a YouTube video of somebody that I enjoy and they say, "Hey, I recommend this person," then you follow that person. It's a way, you are still giving information to the algorithm, and the algorithm is definitely taking that, but you are also making conscious decisions because it's independent. There's an independent aspect to it. Does that make sense?
It does.
So one of the things that I like, I know you and I have had this talk offline, but in a online setting, there's a whole bunch of alternative theories, and YouTube and Reddit and all these different social medias are perfect at sidestepping the mainstream narrative and giving you these alternative narratives.
I don't know about that.
I'm not saying they're more true. I'm just saying that they're alternative.
Maybe they have a facade of being alternative, I guess. Maybe be how I.
Well, that's actually where I'm working. What I'm working towards is saying I actually have alternative in quotes.
Okay.
I have alternative theories.
Here's
in
what I
quotes.
think about it, and I do think we can relate this right back to the Max Headroom incident. In society, you have to allow certain acts of deviancy. It's kind of like engineering when you're building a building and has to have sway in it, right?
Yeah.
In society, you cannot punish all acts of deviancy. It's even like, was it Shawshank Redemption, where there are certain acts where the guards are going to be okay with it.
Nope, we're about to have a visitor.
Yes, we are.
Who is it?
Is that your dad?
No, it's Wesley.
Oh.
Back and forth. I think he got I was sending him a text message. I heard him coming up.
Oh. We still recording?
Carry on. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
We can cut it out if we need to.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, what time are we at now? We're like an hour.
58 minutes.
58. Okay. We'll just hammer out through this last couple things. We probably won't have a whole lot of time for conversation on these. But I feel like
Well, can I just finish what I was saying real quick?
about the alternative theories?
Yes.
Yes.
Because this, I think, relates to it being a facade. I think even with the Max Headroom incident, they're going to allow certain things because you have to. You have to allow certain ebbs and flows within society. And I feel like now, take Reddit, for example, it is alternative in air quotes, but it's the alternative they're allowing to seem as though that they're I don't want to be too extreme, but to seem as though there is free speech, to seem as though there are all these other options, but it's still controlled. Well, it's the deviancy that they're okay with.
So this is the part. So I have here, the revolution will not be televised. So there's a Gil Scott Heron is the poet's / singer / musician's name.
Man, I could have had that queued up.
To just hit it, boom.
Yeah.
You can't, well, that might get us striked, copyright or whatever. But anyway, so like the revolution will not be televised. That always, I always loved that statement and I loved the sentiment, but I, for a really long time, was not sure I understood what it meant. And it clicked with me the other day whenever I was thinking about this specifically, because the revolution will not be televised because the power structure will not show you the thing that will free you from it.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I thought about in V for Vendetta, he blows up the Old Bailey building. And beforehand, see what I'm talking about?
Not off the top of my head, but continue.
So it's the first scene where he has Evie and they go up on they go up on a roof and he starts playing music over the state controlled speakers, and then he blows up the Bailey and it has fireworks that come out of the top of it and make a V.
Yes.
Well, then the news the next day says, hey, a lot of people have been talking about the music that was played, but it was a scheduled demolition. Right. We had already scheduled the building to be demolished. The music and the fireworks was just added on top just for the fun of it.
For your enjoyment.
Right, it's just for the enjoyment of it. So then the state is lying about the actual act. They're not going to say, hey, somebody beat us and blew up our building.
Yeah, why would they broadcast that?
Yeah, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, in reality, it was us. We did it. Yeah. There was no act of rebellion, And I do think that's. It took me a long time to understand that that's what it was talking about with the television. The revolution will not be on the television, because number one, no one's going to be watching the television. By that point, TV is so discredited that that's not where you go for your news. That's not where you go for reality. That's not where you go for the reality of the situation. And like even in the song, that's what he says. Is he's like, you're not going to be watching the TV because you're going to be stealing TVs, because you're going to be rioting.
And one of the parts about it is that, which I will say, especially for that song, it was racial in that context.
Oh, very
Although now
racial.
you can take it out and extrapolate it. But yeah, it's basically saying you don't ever get to unplug. Your fight against the system is constant. Some people get to come home and turn on the TV, but you don't get to. You cannot participate in these systems and then try to revolt later on.
And then he says you're going to be stealing a TV.
Yeah.
And it's like, I thought the whole goal was that we weren't going to be watching TV anymore. Now, it has always been interesting to me, these riots, quote unquote, the protests that turn into riots, and the people that you see doing all of the rioting. You're like, how is this in any way helping you free yourself from the system? Because all you're doing is stealing things that the system told you needed to begin with.
Yeah.
I always thought there was the Sublime song where he, it's like the let it burn, gonna let it burn, where he's talking about the LA riots. And he has a line in it where he says that they went out and basically robbed a whole bunch of stuff. And then he says, like, where do you think I got this guitar that you're hearing today? He stole it in the riots. Like he that's where he got all of his stuff. And so it's just kind of an interesting aspect of we're wanting to be free of society. Meanwhile, the second that you're free of society, you're just going to run and steal as much as you can of society. What's up?
Oh, you're at an hour.
Oh, 1 hour. Okay. Yep. Anyway, I was just throwing that part in. I do have Noam Chomsky, a little quote from one of his. It was an interview that he gave a while back, and the question was about propaganda. Anyway, here's just a little paragraph that he said. Democratic societies can't really work like that because the state can't control behavior by force. It can to some extent, but it's much more limited in its capacity to control by force. Therefore, it has to control what you think. And again, democratic theorists have understood for 50 or 60 years and have been very articulate about it. If the voice of the people is heard, you better control what the voice says. Meaning, you have to control what they think. The method Otorio, maybe that's the name of the method mentions there is one major. Anyway, I can't read. One of the ways you control what people think is by creating an illusion that there's a debate going on, but making sure that the debate stays within very narrow margins. Namely, you have to make sure that both sides debate accept certain assumptions, and those assumptions turn out to be the propaganda system. As long as everyone accepts the propaganda systems, then you can have a debate. So, for instance, we're going to blow up some cities. Are we going to blow up cities in Yemen? Or are we going to blow up cities in Afghanistan? Or are we going to blow up cities in Iraq? That's the debate.
But it still follows the conventions that they're.
But we are going to blow up buildings. That's the propaganda, you know? And I do think that that's interesting because it is so ubiquitous. It's so thick, you know? I didn't really want to take the conversation in the direction of like overt politics, like Trump, for instance, or these different. But that's where I'm at. I think that even the debate as to who's going to be president, it's like both are in such a narrow vein of being the exact same thing, just different colors. That to me,
documentary for the Antisocial Network, they do talk about that, and that there was a lot of these hacks that they're talking about that happened, you know, that was Russian disinformation and stuff like that. There was still a lot coming from right here on our own soil of like pushing the things, you know, which I know you said you weren't going to go here, but the QAnon, the stuff with Hillary, they were hitting both sides just to mess with the whole thing anyway.
Yeah, they were just trying to throw a wrench in the system.
Yeah. And then you wonder, you know, well, I mean, it was obviously projected. I mean, they were. Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, actually. Yeah.
What you got?
Oh, I was just going to say, I know we're ending, but this is very much in line with Michel Foucault. And I'm just going to say listeners can go there if they want more information about the facade of order. Or I guess maybe another way to put it is in that Chomsky quote talking about how we can only control by force to an extent. The rest has to be by their mind.
Coerced.
Yes. Michel Foucault has a whole history of punishment that kind of blatantly talks about that. Oh, discipline and punishment.
Discipline and punishment.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that is. We need to go into more detail on a lot of those things in the future because they are interesting things of thought. So
I guess let me just say this before we wrap it up because this is part of wrapping it up. I feel like we mentioned that Max Headroom incident, and then now we're mentioning a whole bunch of other theories and whatnot. But I think just to wrap it all up, that's what makes it interesting. Otherwise, yes, it is just this random 1-minute video that popped up in the 80s. Cool. Goodbye. But the fact that it kind of became an icon, the fact that people are talking about it, the fact that it's
still representative in today's zeitgeist
is what's interesting about it.
Right.
So,
like, it was interesting because even whenever I typed in, like, television feed hack, it's the number one thing. It's the number one thing that pops up.
This is completely random, but just the other day I was watching a whole lot of music videos because I was trying to find a good one for my class to show them. Just nothing to do with this, just completely separate. I was just watching good music videos. And I came across Eminem's Rap God. And I was like, look, there it is. He's Max Headroom.
Yep.
I never would have caught that before because I didn't know who Max Headroom was.
And I had seen that music video and didn't realize that he was playing a character or playing Max Headroom character.
So its significance in society is what's interesting and what.
Well, that is what Trent was commenting on the other day, saying how ubiquitous that character is. He's still everywhere. In the smallest places that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, there's a lot of little crumbs here and there. You'll see Max Headroom. Things about him. It's weird.
And I don't even think that we talked about it. The name came from the reporter in the movie when he's wrecking his car. The last thing he sees is Max Headroom, which is on a bridge.
Yeah,
it's like Max Headroom,
so
20 feet. And then the movie ends up being Max Headroom 20 minutes into the
Yeah.
future. So it's just kind of an interesting. So for me, for what I was going to say about wrapping up is I think that the main goal should be to unplug. The main takeaway. The main...
Just to continue on with that, yes, I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
Because when you keep talking about what does it mean to hack the feed, my personal opinion is there literally is no way today. Unless you're just really great at coding or something. I don't see a way for me to truly hack the feed. The only way is to, like you said, escape the feed and just disconnect. That's the only way that I can actually not be a constant vessel. Is that the right word? Maybe that's not the right word.
Yeah, I would say vessel.
Product. Consumer, however you want to engage with it.
Yeah,
but that's the only way. Even like Max Headroom, it's like all you have to do is turn the TV off, right? And
or not have the TV on to begin with.
Yes. Yeah. That's it. We just have to turn it off. But that's going to be increasingly more hard as we continue.
Well, and
it already is hard.
I think that the part of it also is having non-captured means of communication. And so, like, it was a little while back, this guy who ran for president, that's how I stumbled onto him, but he's the inventor of email. His name was Vashiva. One of the things he was talking about was he was saying that the mail system in the United States was actually one of the most important institutions at the turn of at the beginning. And the main reason was because people had to be able to communicate and know that their communications would make it from point A to point B. I have to be able to say something to somebody else, and that was part of having political freedom. Because if you lived in a place that would suppress that, it's going to be putting its finger on the scale for one way or the other, and you're going to have an oppressed group. If you have an independent communication system where I can be a Republican, send a message and it's going to get there, or I can be a Democrat, send a message, it's going to get there, then you can actually have discussions, you can have movements. But if it's all controlled, if there's no open, pure decentralized way of communicating, then you can never not have a manipulated system. Because, for instance, if I'm relying on Twitter for my political information and political perspective, it can make me be more right-leaning or left-leaning based off of what it shows me, what it chooses to present me. And so it is actually influencing me left or right all the time. It's just maybe I am enjoying the right-leaning ones. What? Roland?
No, that's a rapping.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just reminding you.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I really do think that this is a good enough subject matter to research a little bit more and even have a part.
Yeah,
two.
kind of run back on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to
I
say.
feel like we're about to roll back into a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, that's true.
We could definitely do that.
That's true.
Easily.
All right, so for wrapping up, I'm saying unplug, and the 3 words that I'll leave you with, just drop them in your brain and that you can pay attention to, is meshtastic, gasifier, and compost. Those 3 words.
Good words for wrapping up.
Those 3 words.
Yeah, we're gonna. That way, they can really be thinking about what
That'll
we're
tease
talking
for
about.
part 2.
Yeah, so those 3 words are all you need to know to stage a successful revolution. Anyway, thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Panhandle Primate Podcast. Shannon, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you want to wrap up real quick?
Well, no. I almost want to
made it really
respond, but I don't want to respond because I would be opening up anything. So, no.
Just do a quick response without it opening anything.
How?
Just
All
say
I was
what
going to say is you said just to prepare for the revolution. I just wanted to, say real quick, I'm not necessarily preparing for a revolution. So, that's all. I don't want to, lump me in the same category.
You're not preparing for revolution?
Well,
I would say ready or not, here it comes on the revolution.
No, I'm not trying to incite a revolution. Let me say that.
Oh, you're not? I'm not
We
saying
will save
I
that
am.
for next time.
I'm not saying
I'm
I
not
am.
trying to incite a revolution either. I'd like to be prepared for
Yes,
the
preparing
revolution.
but not
And I
inciting.
think
That's
that
all.
Well,
y'all
I think it.
touched on a former podcast about
Well,
one?
I was just talking to you.
Oh, on one of our podcasts.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I thought you
Yeah,
meant
before I
different.
was involved.
but see, part of it, it kind of goes all the way back, and you're right, it would start up a whole new thing. But saying that the one act of deviance, the deviant act, throws the wrench in the system that will eventually make the system crash, even if it's not.
Okay, we're gonna pause here because I don't know if I agree with that. So let's save that for next time.
Yeah, let's do.
Okay.
All right.
It's a good place to wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank y'all for listening, and I don't know, we probably got some plugs to plug, but until we have more people paying attention, I don't think that the plugs really matter at this point. So, but anyway, thank y'all for listening, and check us out on the website or Instagram. And until next time, peace out.
Goodbye.